This is Climate Watch. I'm Zhao Ying. Welcome to the show. Cities are home to over half of the world's population. By 2050, that number is expected to rise to 70%. With such rapid urban growth, it becomes increasingly crucial for cities to build resilience and ensure a high quality of life for future generations. But what makes a city sustainable? Is it green energy, efficient public transport, smart technologies, or affordable housing? Well, in reality, sustainability is all of these and more. And cities around the world are finding very different ways to get there. This year's Global Award for Sustainable Development in Cities, also known as the Shanghai Award, gives us a glimpse of that diversity. UN Habitat and the Shanghai Municipality have jointly organized the award, and it highlights practical solutions that can inspire cities worldwide. The winners, Algiers, Madinah, Bogotá, Espoo, and Incheon, each show a unique pathway toward sustainable urban development. What can we learn from their experiences? Joining us today is Bai Xuemei, Professor of Urban Environment and Human Ecology at the Fenner School of Environment and Society at the Australian National University. Professor Bai, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, first of all, how do we define a sustainable city today? Is there such a thing as a perfect model, or are cities always balancing competing priorities?
Yeah, I think in terms of defining sustainable city, we have to go back to the basics, which is the three pillars, right? For example, a sustainable city will mean, environmentally, they should be having this clean ambient environment and protecting natural environment and resources. And socially, citizens, they need to have access to basic services and high quality education, and they need to be able to enjoy a high level of health and well-being, and communities are equitable and resilient. And in terms of economic, a sustainable city need to provide a vibrant economy that really provides high quality job opportunities and with positive long-term outlook and giving the citizens a confidence about the future. So these are the basic elements of sustainable cities. But I think what's unique for cities is that you not only have to look into, the internal within their own administrative boundaries about these three different pillars, but you also need to look at beyond. And by that, I mean, what kind of role, impact you're exerting beyond your boundaries. And because we all know cities, they have enormous requirement of material flow that very often they are becoming global, both in terms of, resource and material requirement, but also, the environmental impact. For example, the greenhouse gas emission, the impact is really global. So we really need to ask the question of what kind of role cities play in global sustainability. And I think it is a very important element in considering sustainable cities today. So in terms of whether there is a perfect model, I don't think there is a perfect model. There's no one-size-fits-all type of single model. Rather, it is really diverse and versatile sort of solutions out there, and which is exactly the strength of looking at cities, and also the fact that actually making cities so fascinating to look at. So we have to recognize that each city, really they are facing unique set of challenges, and they do need to, and really are striving towards finding unique solutions through their own ways that fits their unique situation.
So what do you think is the significance of an award like this? Does it shed light on how cities can better fulfill that global role you just now mentioned?
Yeah, as cities strive to find solutions to their unique set of problems, they become, they very often become innovative, and they have to. So there are many good practices and numerous sort of bright spot of practice that brings us hope. As someone working in the field of environment, we are very often confronted by negative and even depressing sort of reality. But working in urban space often reminds us of human ingenuity. The problem is that these bright spot of good practice, they are not really making headline very often. So it is really important to have a mechanism like the Shanghai Award to highlight this and then show showcase that things can be done. So it is really important to celebrate and showcasing these sort of diverse and innovative ways of cities in the world in terms of what they can do and how they can do it. And they can really inspire and empower other cities to learn from and also take actions. And because we know, cities, they learn from each other so much more than, from, for example, academic research output.
Yes, yes. And actually, we've seen quite a few global awards honor cities for their sustainability efforts. But how does the Shanghai Award distinguish itself among these efforts? Like, what unique perspective or contribution does it bring to the global conversation on sustainable urban development?
Yeah, there are quite a number of awards, but I don't think there are enough as yet. And when we look at the awardees I do notice a very strong focus on developing country cities. Very often, if you look at international awards, they often go to European cities, and in a way, quite understandably so, because these cities are very often considered as the front runners in sustainable city front. So I was quite surprised to see that Espoo in Finland, which is one of this year's awardee, is actually the first European cities to be awarded. So I think Shanghai Award is in a way unique in that it is a legacy of the World Expo Shanghai, which was held in Shanghai in 2010, which had this theme of better city, better life. And I actually have personal good personal sort of feeling about this particular expo because I was part of the Australian official delegate to it, and I was also featured in one of their films in the expo. So I have very warm feeling about this. And it's great to see that, this is such a wonderful way of living a legacy of the expo and keep the spirit of better city, better life alive. The other thing is that I think this is initiated and managed by a city rather than an international organizations, which manifest the important, role of cities in promoting, sustainability beyond their boundary. And one of the concepts we often use is proactive influencing, where, a front-runner cities like Shanghai or other cities, they not only just wait there to be good by themselves and they wait there for others to come and learn, but actually try to actively, proactively try to exert influence and then bring others along. So I think this is one of the great examples of such proactive influence.
Well, we see that this year's award highlights 4 focus areas: adequate housing, people-centered smart cities, green and resilient development, and effective governance. In your view, which of these areas is most challenging for cities to implement?
I would say all these focus areas, they really reflect some of the most acute challenges cities face. For example, like housing, which is a first and foremost requirement, a basic requirement of a sustainable city or any city for that matter, but remain, as a major challenge. As unfortunately, these basic requirements are very often not met. And we know that there will be 3 billion people living in informal settlement by 2050, meaning, without proper housing or proper infrastructure. So our research really shows that major carbon consequence will have to be entailed if we are to provide adequate level of housing and infrastructure to all of these new urban residents, as well as, upgrading the inadequate infrastructure in today's developing country cities. So we can see, providing housing is not only a basic requirement, but doing so can also have a huge environmental impact if it is not done in a proper way. But it is also important to recognize that this is not only a developing country problem, because housing affordability is a really universal challenge, I would say, that require innovative solutions. And this is why I'm particularly interested in Incheon's, $1 one day rent initiative, or Espoo's focus on social inclusion and housing, which really highlights providing affordable housing is such a crucial task. And when we look at the second one, which is, the people-centered smart city, I am really glad to see this combination of people-centered and smart city. We know that there are so many, technologies that can do so many things these technologies can do to enhance urban life and sustainability. And for example, like smart cities driven by technological innovations such as AI or autonomous driving or optimization and real-time monitoring of energy use and water consumption, or traffic system, or the use of AI and big data in some other examples. So I think the application of this technology in healthcare system, as demonstrated in our Madinah and others, really shows that the potential of this technology and how they can be used to improve urban life. Because ultimately, technologies, they really need to serve people's need and contribute to enhancing the well-being of residents. And when we look at the green and resilient development, I think this is extremely important already, but it will become even more important going forward because as we know, climate-related hazards such as extreme heat, flood, fire, they will be exacerbated in terms of intensity and frequency. And cities really, really need to be prepared. And there's some mentioning across the world cities, for example, Bogota's, through more active transportation or enhanced green, urban green, etc. They can all contribute to resilience. But I would really like to see this a bit more prominently showcased, at least more directly. So in my view, cities will need to put, even more emphasis on this, and hopefully this will be reflected in future world. And in terms of effective governance, in the city space, effective governance can make a huge difference. And in a way, in a nutshell, this sums up everything else. And these are really manifested in the excellent examples in this year's awarded cities. For example, the Espoo's approach in terms of integrating SDGs into urban policy and decision making. Incheon's, in terms of innovative renting policy, or Bogotá's in their pioneering effort in, for example, introducing BRT and enhancing social inclusion. So all four are extremely important. I cannot really say one is more important than others, but I can say I would like to see some more emphasis in the future on, for example, resilience.
Yes, as you said, yeah, these are all important for cities to be resilient and sustainable. But actually, what caught my attention is also this term people-centered smart cities, because we know that smart cities are increasingly relying on technology and AI. But how can we ensure that these cities remain truly people-centered? Because are there risks that such tools could inadvertently increase the inequality or social exclusion, and how can we avoid that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And there's always such risk that technological advance become too fast, that it might marginalize certain communities and leave them behind. For example, we all know the proliferation of mobile phone and the rapid development of various applications means that many social functions in Chinese cities in particular require, the possession and use of a mobile phone, including, payment or using a taxi or booking tickets, etc., etc. And they do pose the problem of exclusion for, some elderly or other marginalized community, or even, foreigners visiting China. So I think it is important that alternative options are kept open and special attentions really be given to how to help these marginalized communities to overcome that technological sort of hump. And I think with the exponential and explosive development of AI technology on the horizon, I think this will be an ongoing challenge that we probably don't really have a ready answer yet. But we have to keep in mind that equity and inclusion will be one of the very important elements in terms of, achieving a people-centered smart city.
Yeah, and just now you mentioned some practices in these award-winning cities, but among them, are there specific initiatives or stories that kind of stand out to you as especially inspiring or surprising?
Well, all five cities, their approaches or their achievement, they're all inspiring, each in their own way. But in my mind, the $1 daily rent program in Incheon, South Korea is really inspiring because as discussed, housing affordability is a crisis in many major cities, and especially for younger generation. And this is a challenge that, at the core of economic sustainability, vitality, or intergenerational equality and urban revitalization, and especially probably in the context of aging and shrinking populations, such as in South Korea or in Japan, or in other European cities, or even in the future, not so far away future, even in China, but also in developed country, just developed country cities in general. So how they manage to operationalize this initiative would be, something I'm very interested in learning a bit more, and perhaps for other cities to also look into and learn from.
Yes, indeed. And also, as someone lives in Beijing, I actually noticed that several of this year's award-winning cities, they're using AI and digital tools to manage their traffic. Here, we still rely on measures like car license lotteries to manage congestion. So could cities like Beijing or Shanghai learn from these approaches?
Yes, certainly. But actually, my understanding is that this sort of using AI to optimize traffic kind of thing is already happening actually in cities like Shanghai. I'm not familiar with Beijing, but at least in Shanghai. From my visit to Shanghai the past June, I was shown, to several startup, sort of AI companies, and one of them were exactly focusing on how to, optimize the traffic by using AI. And then they did tell us that they have applications, they have their customers, including, the Shanghai government. So I would think this is already happening. But I think it also important to recognize that AI is not, a silver bullet that can solve every problem. So probably some of the measures, conventional measures that you mentioned, probably is not, mutually exclusive with the AI, more AI focused sort of solution.
Yeah, but can you be more specific on how AI can really manage traffic? Can you give us a sense of how it is doing that?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on AI
Hmm.
traffic, thing, but from what I learned in Shanghai is that they can, provide more accurate and more real-time sort of information about congestion, for example, or about, some of the outlook, and then from combine some of the past experience with, some of the focusing capability to or to redirect the route, designing, your optimal route to avoid some of the congestion, for example. So I believe there are many, many things AI can do, and I think China actually is one of the front runner in doing these sort of things.
Okay. Well, this year's winners, Bogotá, Algiers, Madinah, Espoo, and Incheon, they all have very different social, economic, and climatic contexts. But are there common factors that make a city successful in sustainable development?
Yeah, great question. Indeed, these five cities, they have very diverse socioeconomic and, environmental contexts. And it's really good to see such a diverse cohort of cities recognized. If we have to draw commonality, I think what's in common is in the spirit that these cities are committed to tackle their unique challenges and, committed into, finding solution that works for them. And in doing so, I think two things become essential in my mind. The first one is, very strong political willingness and strong leadership to make things happen. Because we all know none really possible without very strong commitment of the city government and leadership, and then, various engagement of stakeholders as a whole. And the second one is how these cities are trying to be innovative and trying to find pragmatic solutions that are catered to their own problem. As we all know, many cities, they have good vision, but they always, encounter challenges and problems, and many just give up at that point. I think what this experience of these five cities really show is that you really need to be innovative and pragmatic, and needs to be able to find a way either around or beyond or beneath the challenges, go around the challenges, and then achieve your goal. I think those are probably some of the common factors.
Yes, and as you said earlier, most of this year's winners are from developing countries. What does that suggest about the relationship between economic development and sustainable urban practices? Like, are there particular innovations or approaches in these contexts that the global south could perhaps learn from?
Yeah, I think recognizing developing country cities' effort is really crucial because we know actually the vast majority of the challenges that we can see in today's cities are really can be found in global South cities. And we know that cities in the global South, they encounter much more and much more complex sort of challenges. And helping them to resolve and finding solutions in overcoming these challenges is really essential. And I think on the other hand, cities in the global South, they are also they can be also very innovative. And this is probably because of their constraint. I think there was one of the famous quotation, I think it was Mayor of Curitiba, who once said, once you cut your budget by 1 0, then, you become, or even 2 zeros from your budget, then you have to become, innovative. That's how you become innovative. And this is a city that, introduced the bus rapid transit system that become, proliferated around the world cities. So it is very important that we recognize these global South cities innovations and then, um, highlight them and spotlight them so that other global South cities can learn from. But it is also important to recognize that learning really needs to be bidirectional because traditional concept of learning or innovative practice dissemination, those sort of things, is considered to be always from global North to global South. But it really needs to be bidirectional. And this is not really political correctness or just rhetorical, but really there are burgeoning, innovation in global South cities that, global North cities can also learn from.
Yes, and as we know, this award is a joint initiative of UN Habitat and the Shanghai Municipality. Does it reflect a broader shift in China's international role in urban sustainability? Because just several decades ago, most of Chinese population were still living in rural areas.
Yes, absolutely. I think, again, this is a wonderful way of living a legacy of the Shanghai Expo. And I think, as you said, the Chinese cities have really experienced unprecedented growth in the past 4 decades. And in this process, they have experienced enormous challenges and they have stepped into several pitfalls and learned many lessons. For example, in terms of, the really heavy pollution. At some point, I remember in around 2010, that time, the vast majority of the world's most polluted cities were from China, Chinese cities. And on the other hand, they also accumulated lots of experiences in overcoming these challenges. As we have seen, this year, for example, like Beijing or Shenzhen, most major cities in China, their air quality has significantly improved. So these lessons and experiences can really provide valuable source for others to look at, and then in with the purpose of to avoid the same pitfall, and also to learn from some of the good practices. And I think going forward, we can certainly expect a more proactive and more prominent role from China and Chinese cities can be expected as its economic and social development, and also very importantly, innovation really progresses.
Yes, yes. So with this rapid urbanization experience over the recent decades, do you think China now is in a position to lead global efforts on sustainable cities? And what unique contributions do you think it could bring to the international conversation?
Yeah, I think this rapid urbanization experienced by China over the last 4 decades is truly a transformative sort of change in a very, very short time period. I think we have gone through this process where, Western developing countries have gone through more than, 200 years sort of journey. And there's lots of lessons for the, rapidly developing and urbanizing countries to learn from. For example, how do you avoid severe environmental degradation while, promoting urbanization? And I think, as I said, the Chinese cities really innovate, stand out in terms of, their experimental sort of spirit, where they, really try to experiment and then try to look at and search for, try out, and identify actionable and effective sort of solutions. which is really supported by the mechanism and spirit of experimentation, as well as mechanism for extracting the policy learning and scale up that into upper level or proliferate into other cities. So yeah, experience and lessons are both important. So both failures and success stories need to be shared with others. And I think there's one important aspirational sort of element that can be drawn from looking at China's case, is that it is actually possible to leapfrog through rapid development and adoption of some of the alternative technologies.
Professor Bai, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And that wraps up this edition of Climate Watch. You can find more episodes on your favorite podcast platforms. Just search for Climate Watch and hit subscribe. Don't forget to leave us a quick review or share it with a friend. We'd also love to hear from you. You can email us at radio@cgtn.com with your questions or feedback. I'm Zhao Ying. Thank you so much for listening. See you next time.